Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Tales from the Cage. This one I'm excited for. We have Dan the Handler Hornbuckle on. Dan, how you doing?
Doing very well, man. How you doing, bud?
I'm good. I'm good. So we're gonna dive right into it. And I always ask, like every fighter that I ever have on, is really the gist of it, how everything started. What got you into martial arts, whether it be MMA or if you were doing traditional martial arts before that? What was like your like first way to step in this?
Well, I mean, there are a couple steps for like the first ones. One, like we had the VHS tapes of the original UFCs. We'd get down at the local rental store.
Oh, I
We'd get
started.
those,
Go ahead.
right? You slide them in, and watching that, you're like, man, I could totally do that. But that's just
Uh-huh.
like no weight classes or something that talks to you from that video. Like you could do that. And then years go by, and then the next step, the step that actually got me into it was I was working at Menards, and you may have heard of this guy. His name's Kyle Watson.
Oh yeah.
Was He was working in the front office, and I was part of the receiving, and we always had to communicate. And I'd come up to the office on a Monday, and he had a black eye and his arm in a sling, and he told me he had an MMA fight. And I look at this Abercrombie guy and I'm like, there's no way you're tough. One and two, that like you're out there fisticuff fighting. He's like, no, I do. He's like, you can come on and train with me. It's like, okay, pretty boy. Like, I'm gonna beat your ass, and then I'm gonna, bro. I went to him. We went to training like that next Tuesday, and he mopped the mat with me. I was in the triangle, arm bars, being swept, and I didn't even know what any of this was. And it's like, this is awesome. So Kyle Watson's the one that ended up bringing me in and putting me on the mat and guiding me. Jeff Seraphin, Kyle Watson, and Dr. Arif are the three main guys that pushed me in the beginning years.
Man, I'm getting
And so that's how it
flashbacks.
all started there.
Not only did I used to also UFC 6 was the first VHS that I rented that got me interested, but I used to work at Menards too. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, damn. Yard dog, or where'd you work?
Crestwood. So like right off the
Okay.
expressway. Yeah, 120 Calisag, whatever that is in Cicero. Um
Yeah. What department did they have you in?
I was a carryout, or is that what they called it? Yeah, I was collecting carts and they would radio me whenever they needed
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
for the car. Yeah, I
Yeah.
one of my
Blast from the past.
scars
Nice.
on my face, people think it's from fighting, but it was from a woman opening up her trunk and hitting me right in the face. I just busted open bleeding. Yeah, for me
Yeah.
to put the cinder, I'm like, I'm
Oh
okay. They're
no.
putting all their like cinder blocks in the trunk, just blood ever.
I'll
Yeah.
be fine. Yeah. Yikes.
So was this over at Jack
Crazy.
School then, I'm assuming?
Yeah, yeah, that was that McVickers had his brick and mortar in Indiana, and then he came to Champaign and was in the racquetball court of a fitness center there. And that's where a lot of blood and sweat and some tears from time to time were shed. So that was with McVicker.
Now, how often was Wellington Diaz over there?
He would only come in probably once a year for seminars.
Okay.
And yeah, that was about the extent of it. Like there was always an invite, like, hey, if you guys are ever in the Arizona area where his brick and mortar is, we
Right.
were welcome to go. But like at that time, for me, traveling for training was just simply unheard of, and
Right.
didn't realize what that actually was until he came to a seminar for us in Champaign. Wow,
Yeah.
wow, yeah, it's night and day difference, man.
I mean, and he's still active, which is like nuts, which is great.
Oh yeah, he's active in winning.
Right.
and
Right.
he's impressively winning,
Right.
and he's smoking top talent. Like he's just it's phenomenal to see.
Yeah. No, he's one of those old school guys where like how they use the word crafty to like describe more like veterans. Like he has so many effective parts of his game that one, not everybody even knows at this point. Maybe some stuff is rarely even taught anymore, but it's also stuff that suits like that age demographic so well, where he doesn't have to invert, he doesn't have to berimbolo, he could trap somebody's legs and boom, mount him, and that like with minimal effort, and he does it so well.
Right,
Awesome.
right, right.
Um, your MMA debut on paper is Total Fight Challenge February 18th, 2006. Did you have any fights before that, or is that accurate?
That I would say that's accurate. I mean, I did some barroom boxing stuff, but it was all unsanctioned, and Nothing too hot and heavy, and but as far as like the whole package,
Mhm.
that total fight challenge was my very first MMA fight.
So you TKO Mike Bodziak in the first round. Who got you that fight? Was that just through like Kyle or Jeff? Because I know Kyle and Jeff Serafin were fighting for Joe already. Or did Jack get you that as a manager? How was that like kind of played out?
No, how that played out was when I started competing jujitsu. I won a couple tournaments, and then I'm like, I'm ready to fight to Kyle and Jeff. And they're like, no, hey, pump the brakes, cowboy. Like, you need a year of solid competition and competing not only in jiu-jitsu, but also in like smoker Muay Thai fights.
Mhm.
So there was a year time that I had to, um, I wouldn't say earn the right, but at least step up to the plate and compete. And then when the time came, like about 8, 9 months in, like I'm wrecking shop everywhere. I was like, I'm ready for a fight. And Kyle's like, perfect. There's a fight coming up. So Kyle called Joe Goitia. It's like, hey, I got this newcomer on. He goes, okay, well, so Kyle ended up getting that set up. And I was under the umbrella of Kyle and Jeff for Total Fight Challenge.
Now, did you do any smoker Muay Thai fights?
Yeah, all around. There was one in Iowa, down in St. Louis,
Oh.
Indiana. They were just clubs that we all got together that we knew through that and competed.
Did you do any of the ones that active
So,
at like the border of Illinois and Indiana and Lansing? Because that was a hot spot at that time
mm,
too.
no, not in Lansing at the time. It was in Indiana, like downtown Indiana.
Oh, okay. So then your next fight after that is against Steve Conley, Duneland Classic, one of Chad Wagner's guys. Did you know anything about him or Chad Wagner, especially before that fight?
No, I didn't know anything about Chad Wagner. I know I was supposed to fight somebody else, and he stepped in last minute for the fight. I was like, okay. I mean, I didn't know any difference at the time on, anybody stepping in. I knew I was gonna do what I needed to do, and that's that's how Conley came about for the second fight.
Now, do you
Who
remember
was I was supposed to fight one of I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just asking, do you remember how that fight got booked? Who set that up?
So the Wisniewski boys were good friends with Watson.
Okay.
And so Keith and Justin Wisniewski put their show on, and I was supposed to fight one of their guys who we fought in jiu-jitsu a couple times. So they wanted to match us up for MMA. So Kyle and the Wisniewskis kind of went back and forth, and they included me to see if we wanted that fight against their guy.
Hmm.
Gosh dang, I can't remember his name. Tom something, I believe. Tough guy. Great. It would have been a great fight, especially both of us being like early in jiu-jitsu and not really like he had a wrestling background, I got a wrestling background, and we were both, he was with the Snooskies, I was with Watson in the gang. It would have been a pretty damn good fight, especially for like we were both like 1-0, 2-0, something like that.
Yeah.
It would have been a great fight. But yeah, Kyle set that up with the Snooskies.
Now, who was cornering you at this time?
Kyle would show up. My brothers and Jeff, those two mainly showed up for my MMA stuff.
Now, down there where you guys are training, obviously it was like a different time back then where it's still like somewhat style versus style, not as like as it was in 93, let's just say UFC 1, UFC 2, but it was still like, all right, I'm a jiu-jitsu fighter. I'm going to do what I have to do on the feet, but I'm going to get to the ground or vice versa or whatever. Did you guys have a striking coach or was it kind of just like amongst yourselves?
We did have a striking coach, and that was Ryan Blackerby.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay.
So yeah, so we would travel to Peoria
Yeah.
and train with him and his crew, and David Gaston uh, was around at that time. So I was training with him, Gaston, Ryan, Jeremy Harmonson, and these guys up at that Peoria Athletic Club, and just getting my brain beat around by them for years and years. And Ryan would bring Dean Lisi down for seminars down to us in Champaign.
Okay.
So that's how I ended up. So they're kind of connected. So Lisi's kind of with and mentored Ryan, and they're really good friends. So then those two would come down and do seminars for striking, and then Dr. Arif was like the leader of our gang and the mastermind, the game planner strategist, and he would take those combos and he would run classes through the U of I, and that would be like our striking classes, MMA. And that was kind of like when we started blending the striking with the wrestling and the wrestling with the jujitsu and the jujitsu with the ground and pound.
Right.
And that was the dynamic that we ran for probably the first 2, 3 hard years.
Okay. Yeah. And
Mm.
I see Ryan's son's doing really well. His first few MMA.
Bro,
He's got like he's really
bro, that
a
kid.
bright future.
Mm, that kid, I've seen him grow up.
Yeah.
I remember him. I don't want to tell stories because he'll beat me up now. But I'm sure he'll watch this and be like, "What are you saying, Dan? I'm going to get you."
Oh yeah.
Thomas
I
is a
see him
phenomenal athlete, man.
aggression posters. Looks like he's doing really well for himself, especially like I said at a young age. That's good to see. That's really good to see.
Yeah, yeah, he's so disciplined, and he,
Yeah.
like when I was living in Champaign, he would come down with his dad. Like when I had Thunderdome, um, Thomas would come down with Nate Gaston, his dad, and a couple other Peoria Athletic Club guys when I was getting ready for fights. And like I have a style that these young kids don't really see as often. So they come to me, and plus the strategy and the stuff I've learned over the years, I'm just passing on to that next generation. So Thomas would come down quite often, and then now that I'm rolling around with James Martin and his gang, it was just natural for us to all get together, and I bridged that gap between Lycans Den and Peoria Athletic Club for us to all have that the superior top training to merge the gyms because you need those hammers and you need those nails,
Right.
and that dynamic. It's like we're all training hard without hurting each other, but then we're all collaborating and figuring out game plans and strategies, in the future and what's going to work and evolving each other's games. Not only is it great on the ground, but then we have Ryan and Thomas, for the striking part, and we just blend it and meld it. And like now you're seeing the results of these hybrid kids that are coming through that have trained, hard times.
Your fight after that, Madtown Throwdown up in Wisconsin, Nate Hami, you face your first loss. Super tough guy. I was actually just talking the other day about him to a promoter up in Minnesota that had him fight at his show too. I'm not even going to say anything that he told me, but he got into some crazy stuff in life. But he said he was ridiculously tough, and if he had more of a straightened head on him, that he would have been like he would have gone really far. What do you remember about this guy in the cage? Or that might have been a ring
He took
actually.
an ass whooping. Yeah, it was a ring in Madtown Throwdown, and it was no elbows, but knees and soccer kicks are allowed on the head
Yes, yes.
to a grounded opponent.
Right, right. No, exactly. It was almost pride rules up there
Yeah.
for event. Yeah.
So, small caveat to the Pride rules is my very first MMA experience for pay per view was that 16-man tournament over in Saitama, Japan, when
Mhm.
Rakota Arona, Rampage, and I can't remember however many other. There's 80,000 people in the Ariake Coliseum. Um, the Prime Minister of Russia was there. Van Dam was there, which was a big deal at the time to me, right? Like Van
Right.
Dam's a big deal. And I'm like, so that was my first experience. I'm like, Kyle, I kind of nudge him because we were over at Kyle's house. I was like, I'm gonna fight there one day. He's like, hey, pump the brakes, bro, pump the brakes. I'm like, okay, all right, well, but truth be told, that's actually where I got that knockout on Gono.
Oh yeah, no, we'll get
Was
into that.
yeah. Where was I? Where's I segued from that?
So Nate Hami, Madtown
Oh
Throwdown.
yeah, Nate fucking homie. So yeah, the Pride rules, and I was like, I didn't know anything about it, but then that took me to the Pride, the flashback to the Pride where they were stomping the head and kicking the head, and Kyle told me the difference in the rules. I was like, oh man, that's crazy. So then when the fight offer came up for the 4-man tournament, which was Madtown Throwdown, it was a
Right.
4-man tournament. I drew homie the first round, and then Alexander something was the next one. Is that the next guy?
Andy
uh
Normington.
and Andy Normington, yeah. So Nate Homie, he took a beating, man. Like I was in pretty decent shape, and I was punching and kicking the dog shit out of him. He was great, amazing grappler, and I was beating him up on the ground and ground and pounding him. And I mean, he had it in submissions. I was pulling out of him and causing damage. And first round, I definitely feel like I won, even though he had good submission attempts. I was still on top, dominating and pushed the pace and top. And then second round, I definitely feel like I opened up, winning it, and then he caught me in a triangle in like the last 30 seconds. And at that point, it was only 2 5-minute rounds. And I'm gonna be honest, like, I was pretty tired, but I was in good shape enough to where I was putting on, pretty damn good beating on him. And I did end up, beating him pretty good because he submitted me, but he physically wasn't able to continue in the tournament. So he won the battle, but I won the war because he didn't continue on in the tournament.
So then they gave you that spot for the, so you moved on.
Right.
That's what I
So
was going to
so
ask.
he
Okay,
pulled
yeah.
out. Yep. So they pulled him out and put me into the finals, and then that's when I broke Normington's face with knees on the ground.
Yeah. So then you go in, you fight. It was a couple months later in September, total fight challenge again. Justin Wilcox, you beat him minute 20 TKO, and then your next fight, just a few months after that, same venue, Hammond Civic Center, Ironheart Crown 11. This is the first time I personally saw you fight. I was the runner. So basically, I went down to the locker room, told you you're up next, brought you up there. And it seems like so long ago. It's what, 2025,
Oh man.
18 years ago. All right. Everyone thinks I'm super young. I tell everybody I look way younger than I actually am. Like I've been around
Right.
for a while. So Wayne Bogart, and you know what's funny is I was going to ask you about this regarding Miguel Torres, but I actually ran into him this morning at a tournament, so I asked him. But I'll tell you what I spoke with him about. So we're talking about that fight. I'm like, Miguel, I'm like, what was with that like kabuki mask you wore? Like, what was the story behind that? I'm like, do you remember? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Uh-uh.
So he walked out to you. I have a really weird, vivid memory of this. You came out to the Triple H theme song, "The Game" by Motorhead, and
Okay.
Miguel had like a kabuki mask that he wore out to the ring when he was cornering you. I don't think he cornered you in it, but like during your entrance, he wore it. And I asked him about like what was the story. He said it was a mask that he had that he painted himself. It was mostly white with like black, like some like black design. He said he had a samurai mask that was like a really nice, expensive one that he didn't want to bring out in case like he lost it or so he brought his own one. And he basically said that he saw Sakuraba do that for some fights. He always wanted to do it for a fight, but he's like, you know what, I'm cornering today. I'll just do it that. So yeah, I don't know if you remember that or not, but yeah, he knew what I was talking about.
No, no, he was behind me. Oh man, that was yeah, he was behind me. He was definitely part of the train. Like we went to jiu-jitsu tournaments, and that's how Kyle was really good friends with Miguel.
Yeah,
And Kyle would take me up the train with Miguel, and I've I'm to this day I still tell stories about a 135-pound man whooped my ass. Like I feel no empathy for anybody that says I'm always because you're bigger. I'm like, he has no empathy for bigger guys. He
right,
beats the dog shit out of bigger guys. So
right.
I don't want to hear it. Like
He
man.
mentioned you and Kyle going up there, so that you guys got a lot of Call of Duty going on too after training was over.
Call of Duty. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It would be talking shit before headphones were cool. Through
Right.
the rooms, man. We were talking shit.
So,
Oh,
you go around, you fight at CFC 2, Max Fowler. You beat him 30 seconds. You beat Brent Weedman down in Indianapolis. You submit him in the second round with a triangle choke. You're back up to Hammond again, Alex Carter. Another quick one, arm triangle, 35 seconds. And then you go into the hook and shoot circuit where um, you had three fights in one night. Was that a six-man tournament? Did you? I'm assuming you took it to the
yeah,
finals because you
it
won
was.
all your fights there.
Yeah, it was an 8-man
Or
tournament.
yeah, sorry, yeah, doing my math
And
wrong.
no, no, no. You're good. You're good. And that was somebody pulled out, and they called Watson. Kyle really like did the majority of my managing opportunities because he was already connected with everybody. And so he would give me a phone call. It's like, hey, I got this 170-pound tournament down in Evanston, Illinois. Is it Evanston? Evanston? No, Evansville. Yeah,
Evansville,
we were.
yeah, Indiana, yeah,
Yeah,
Evansville.
yeah, Evansville. And he's like, it's an 8-man tournament. It's only $2,500 to win all three fights. He goes, but you got to win all three fights or something silly. It's like 5-5. Whatever the breakdown was, is like you're walking out with 2,500 for the night, or maybe 15. I can't remember. He goes, but it comes with a 3-fight Bodog contract. I was like, oh shit. And Kyle was already fighting in Bodog. Seraphin, I'm pretty sure, was fighting in Bodog. Um, Derek Noble was fighting in Bodog at the time, and like they're traveling them all over the world. Russia, Costa Rica, Vancouver, Japan, and
Oh
all
yeah.
these stuff. Like Bodog was like the hot ticket. And I was like, well, I want to fight there because that's where all my peers are fighting. Like I feel like I belong in those ranks and prove myself to them. So that was really the motivation going into that tournament was to get that contract to make that next big step for myself.
Were you working with Miguel Adarate or Kyle, or was Kyle, or do you know? Like,
Um, I think Inarati came through. I don't know how that all planned out, to be honest with you. I think one of our guys was called and contacted to take it, and it may have been Inarati at the time,
hmm.
or oh my goodness, why am I drawing a blank on his name right now? Jeff. Um, oh my goodness, I'm kicking myself in the ass because his name. I mean, it's Jeff, the head guy of Bodog. He was a commentator on the UFC early on. Jeff. Oh my goodness.
Mike Davis would be killing me right now for not answering his last.
Yeah, Mike Davis would be killing me too for not answering it. Dave, Jeff.
I know who you're
Holy,
talking about. I can't pin the last name.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's fun. I was actually talking to Mike earlier on the phone, and then he called me right before we started getting set up. I had a son, or I couldn't pick up, but yeah, yeah. Mike told me that like he said that his name probably wasn't thrown around, but he said that he was really telling
Osborne,
like, hey,
Jeff Osborne,
Buckle, who was it?
Jeff Osborne.
Okay, yeah, Osborne. There you go. Yeah, Mike said that he was really putting your name out there amongst those guys. After that event, you fight at Total Fight Challenge again. I remember, I think I saw you and Kyle there. Because I was definitely there. I actually had video of it long time ago. You fight Matt Shaw, who he had a 4-2 record, but his two losses were against really tough people. It's like a prime Gideon Ray and this other guy from England who was like 12-1. You beat him in the second round arm triangle choke. This is kind of the point where now, like, you're like a household name in this area. Like fans who you like probably didn't even know personally knew who you were. You know what I mean? Like this is like at this time, are you kind of feeling like, hey, I'm getting up there at the next level?
Yeah, at that point, it truly is. I didn't know what the next level was, um, because I had already, like, I had that opportunity with Bodog, and I felt like that was the next step. So that was already there, and it's like, okay, yeah, I don't want to say beating all this local talent because I mean they were all tough in their own right. It's just a matter of just how it plays out. But I knew I wanted better competition, and I didn't know how to get that.
So your next fight in Bodog, you fight Peter
Jack Kaczynski.
Kaczynski. There you go. He's from Sweden. You go over to Canada for this fight. You put him away. A head kick.
Body kick.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. It was a body kick. He grunted like a pig, bro.
Okay.
It was amazing. He fell to the corner and he waved his hand. He said he didn't want any more.
So then your next fight, you got it's kind of like a cross promotion, which again, Bodog and Hook and Shoot kind of were like a feeder, if you will. You fight
Yeah.
Corbin Ray again, and then you get one more fight, Andrew Buckland, where you win with an armbar. And then here's this is what we were talking about earlier. You go off to Japan. Now, before even getting that fight, how did you get in line with Sengoku? Was that through Shu Hirata?
Shu Hirata and Mike Davis.
Okay.
Those two are the ones. But Davis was the guy that was pumping my name up around here quite a bit
Yeah.
in the Chicagoland area. And he knew Shu and he knew Osborne because
Okay.
he was help matchmaking and feeding people and whatnot. So those were the guys that got me over there to that stage.
Now, what was the hospitality like in Japan? Like start from the beginning? First, do you speak any Japanese?
Not at all.
Okay. Was it difficult there with no Japanese or no?
No, no. It's the complete opposite there when it comes to non-speaking, non like primary language people.
Uh-huh.
Where you're in Japan, you don't speak Japanese. They're very patient. They're very kind. They break out menus that are in English and help point. Like, hey, how would you do it? How would you, do you want the number one? Yes, I want the number one. You want the number two? Like, they're pointing to the numbers and they're like, yes, yes, no, no. And then they go down the line of what you want, and then you order, and then they point to the screen like, hey, this many yen. They were very understanding and appreciate Americans, and not only were we American, but we were also fighters.
Right.
I mean, there was no getting around that bush. Like, you're not going to hide it in Japan. And they were very respectful. And if any non-American showed up here, or any Asian person was talking here in the States,
Right.
just how rude is an American to those Asian people nine
Right.
times out of 10?
So
If
you know
they
what's
went to
funny?
McDonald's, fuck.
I'm going to Tokyo for my honeymoon in August, and I've been practicing
Nice.
crazy, like every day, just Duolingo books that I have. Like there's just labels of words all over my house that in Japanese. So up in Arlington Heights, Illinois, there's a place called Mitsuwa Marketplace. It's a Japanese supermarket. They got a food court there. So I'm there with my fiance, and man, I like ate like all day. I just kept going up to each like different like places to eat. It was just so much good food. But I spoke Japanese to one of the workers there just to get myself some practice, and she did a double take, and she looked so excited and happy. Like hearing me speak Japanese, and it's broken. It's my Japanese is broken,
Sure.
but she was like how you're saying, like patient and like teaching me words, and like she was just super like excited about it.
That's awesome. Like, they
Yeah.
were patient, understanding, and
Right.
educational with it. Like, no, no, no. How about try this? Try this.
Right.
Yeah, man. Have you ever been to Japan before?
Not yet. Not yet. It'll be my first
Oh
time.
man. Yeah. Well,
So this fight
look,
in Sengoku, you lose by triangle, and then Sherdog, not one of the forum members, but a staff member, writes an article about the event, and he was kind of bad mouthing you. Do you remember this?
not in there. Not no, I don't remember that.
So one of the Sherdog writers, I forgot which one it was at the time, made some comments, which I always thought was funny because then you went and fought in Sengoku again and got a highlight reel knockout, which probably shut him up.
Yeah.
But he said something. He basically called you a can crusher and said that you're just going to go back to hook and shoot and beating up. And he tagged Courtney. He like mentioned Courtney Ray specifically. He said something like he's going to go back to beating up people like Courtney Ray for the rest of his career. Which like I always wanted to send him the video of your next Sengoku fight and be like, hey,
Mhm.
he's still making these comments. I was always curious if you knew about this article or not.
I think somebody mentioned that article to me, and I'm like, okay, like, haters are gonna hate,
Right.
and um, I'm not one to take like negative criticism and not do anything with it. But I don't recall that nobody ever specifically mentioned it. But they said somebody said Sherdog and Courtney Ray, and just like whatever. I'm like, all right, that's cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, I knew what happened in the Mike. What's his name again?
Wow.
Mike Pyle fight, and there was a huge jump in competition. It was the
Right.
difference between training full time and recreationally training.
Right.
And not that I was recreationally training, but I did not have the access or the capabilities at the time to train full time. And there was a night and day difference. It's like, okay, you want to get into that top 50, top 25, things on your training side is going to have to change, because you got a taste of what an extreme couture jiu-jitsu coach Randy Couture felt like.
Right.
He's got all of them. He's got oh my goodness, what's that one actor guy? He was 170. Jay Haran cornering
Uh,
him. And then what's that really stocky wrestler, 155?
Gray Maynard.
Uh, Gray Maynard, yeah. Oh, so Gray Maynard.
Mhm.
Gray Maynard cornering him. You're like, that's the first time you ever been around a competitor who his coaches are competitors, and
Right.
they're not low level guys.
Right. No, exactly.
And it's not that they got in my head, but it's like a reality check that, and it's nothing against Seraphin, it's not against Watson, nothing against the guys that I'm with. It's That's their life
Oh, I know. No, dude, I know what you
at
mean.
the time. That's all. Yeah.
No,
And it's like, hey,
it's full time when you're surrounded by like serious talent. Like honestly, like the first time, like Mark Lehman's my coach, as he's been like the last 5 years. The first time I ever went like up to train with him, I'm like, this guy, like I just had no confidence. I was just like, this guy's used to like grappling with Johnny Hendricks, and now like I'm gonna look terrible, even though like I look good at my gym, but like in his eyes, who he's used to, like it's just there's just levels. And then when it's elite talent training with elite talent, and then more, and then travelers that go in and come in for 2 weeks, it's hard to compete with, you know.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Yeah. And so I got a taste of it. And like, go ahead.
oh I was just oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. It's when it comes to a fight like that, and it's like, well, I have to make a change in my training. So yeah, like negative comments like that, and an article, okay, that's great. Like that's just one article. Everybody's gonna lose. So okay. And then gears changed in my training. I found an incredible strength conditioning coach with Joe Terry, and I spent more time with Ryan Blackerby. And then I also had or actually I had two striking coaches, Neelan Vanderoth and Koban Nisarletathong, the world champion Koban.
Mhm.
I started training with those guys. I trained with Koban and Neelan 3 times a week, and then I'd go with Ryan 2 times a week, and then I'd go to my strength and conditioning guy 3 days a week. And it's not that I went away from my grappling. It was just like, okay, my grappling's one part, and I know I'm decent at it, and I can survive. Obviously, I got submitted by Mike Pyle, but it's like, okay, they have to get me there, so let's focus on those aspects
Right.
and correct it and do better. And that's what we did. And then my striking went to astronomical levels.
So soon after that, we're going to touch on one more fight of yours before we wrap up.
Yeah.
Joe Alexander. It's only a 46-minute fight. You TKO him, knock him out in the first. I was at cage side for this filming. I wish I still had the video, because one of my favorite local MMA fights is like it has to do with, or like moments, local MMA moments has to do with this fight, but it's not the fight itself. I don't know if you saw any video, if you heard it, if you just weren't paying attention, but Ray Flores' voice cracked miserably when he was announcing you. Do you remember that or no? Like where the crowd
No,
kind of laughed.
no, not
And
at all.
he's embarrassed about this to this day. He goes, Dan Hornbuckle. And like the crowd is laughing. I'm done. Like, and I had video, and I kept showing it. Like it was on an actual video camera back then, and I kept playing it to Ray, and he was like putting his hands like he didn't want to see it.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
man. I mean, just man, I don't remember that part, but I definitely know Ray Flores and
yeah.
what that stud's doing right now.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
No, I'm really happy for Ray.
Yeah, man, I'm so happy for him. But yeah, you always look forward to those guys calling your name. But sometimes, I mean, I don't remember that with Joe Alexander and his voice cracking. I had that gorilla in front of me.
Right.
Yeah, you know how it is when you get in competition. Like I
Right.
don't pay. I'm locked in, and
Exactly.
certain things you have to learn how to block out, and you can't take it all in. And
Right.
so
Right.
that's great to hear, though.
Oh, it was,
I
it was
would love to watch that film. Like we should take a picture and send it to Ray.
fun.
Look what we're watching.
So one more thing really quick. Am I correct that you were an alternate for the Ultimate Fighter 6 when Matt Hughes and Matt Serra was coaching?
That's correct. I had the paperwork and the flight call ready to go.
When Roman Matichian, was that his name, pulled out, he got it was one of like Carl Parisian's guys. I think it was Roman Matichian. He got injured, and then they ended up bringing War Machine in. Did they contact you at all about that? No.
No.
You know,
So clearly they wanted a little bit more spice on the TV show than a freaking wolf to kill their people.
and that's what always drove me nuts is like, and I told this to Ray when I had him on the podcast when we were talking about you. I was like, they had Blake Bowman on that episode. Nothing against the guy, but like the levels aren't even close between you and him. And it's just, I feel like the producers also wanted people that they could almost bully to get that drama on, where they probably put a couple
Yeah,
guys with bad records.
yeah,
So people like Mac Dance
yeah.
screw around with them. But
I seen the table when I was out there in Vegas. there was two tables. There was the UFC Dana and his guys, and then there was the production and their table and
Exactly.
their guys. So one side gets to pick the sheep, and the other side gets to pick the wolves. And
Right.
then they feed, and then they create that exactly what you were saying, where they want that drama. They want those people they can, say this and that, and da, 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 da. And then the wolves are like, I don't give a shit what you say because I'm going to eat you in the cage. And the
Right.
wolves are like, blah, 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 blah. And then they get eaten.
Right.
And yeah, and they weren't going to be able to do that with me. I was going to go in there and destroy their men. And that's it is what it is. Like, yeah, that hurt my ego a lot then, just being a gut level honest. Like,
Oh,
really? Like, those guys? Ugh.
exactly. You ended up being Bellator champion, had a hell of a run. Dan, I'm gonna let you go. It was great having you on.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it, bud.
For sure. Let's take it easy. We'll keep
All
in
right.
touch.
See you. Yep. See you, bud.